Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is David the Sun, Raised to Others. Coming back at you this early morning. I don't know how early it is. What time is it? With another live video. And the topic this morning is the real reason there are so many assholes everywhere. The real reason there are so many assholes everywhere. If you think about, I've always said this, we have a very high moral imposition on children. We have a very high moral imposition on children. So much so that we will use violence against children to impose our perspective. I hate that. Sorry, guys. Hold on a second. We will use violence to impose a moral code on our children. Whatever we believe that moral code to be, we'll impose it upon children. And so instead of raising children to be philosophers, right? Because when you're raising children to be philosophers, you have to be wise, right? That's the point of philosophy, right? We're teaching them how to live well. But we don't really teach children how to live well, because a lot of our children's development is retarded by our ego. I'll say that again. A lot of our children's development is retarded by our ego. So I'm going to explain that to you a little bit, right? So I talk about the moral imposition that we put on children. But we have a very lax moral imposition on adults. We have a very lax moral imposition on adults. And what that does is it makes children then take the position in childhood, right? This is a childish mentality that you are supposed to be working out of them to develop them into philosophers, right? This is what you're supposed to be doing. But instead, you are imposing this upon them. You are imposing foolishness upon children. And you do that by way of having a higher moral imposition on children than you have on adults. So we have very lax moral codes that we apply with adults, right? With adults is like, I hear people say stuff like this all the time. They'll say something like, I'm grown, right? Now, whenever you hear somebody say, I'm grown, they not talking about something virtuous that they about to do. Right? They talking about some foolishness. They're talking about some foolishness that they're about to engage in, and that because they're grown, then nobody can hold them to a moral standard, right? But children, you do hold to a moral standard. So in children's mentality, I can't wait till I get grown, then I can do what I want to do. And that's not exactly what you want to have in the transition of a child into an adult. You don't want to have a person having the mentality that, when I get grown, I can do what I want to do, right? Because the idea is supposed to be that when I get grown, I'm going to be a responsible adult, a responsible citizen, a responsible parent, a responsible student, a responsible boss, a responsible employee, right? We want everybody to be responsible. But when you impose upon children this moral standard that doesn't transition into adulthood, it doesn't transition into adulthood. You stunt the growth of the child. And then we end up with all these assholes out here where everybody think that freedom is the ability to do whatever you want to do. And that is not freedom, right? Because what you are imposing upon everybody else is tyranny. It's just the singularity of tyranny. And what happens is, because you have all of these little tyrants all around everywhere, right? I'm not talking about the children now. I'm talking about these asshole adults, right? You have these little tyrants everywhere. Then what happens is there is a dominance hierarchy of tyranny. And that's how you end up with Hitler, right? That's how you end up with a person like Hitler or Mussolini or Mao. Like, you end up with these people who have the ability to bring together all these little tyrants into one big system of tyranny. And that ain't what we want. That ain't what we want. We don't want one big system of tyranny, right? We want a system of loving, empathic, and very wise human beings all working together to progress and help us transcend our animal-like nature. But that's not what we do. That's not what we do. We tell children, you gotta go to school. You gotta get up. You gotta go to church. You gotta go to mosque. You gotta do all of these things. Right? And if the kids ask you, well, why I gotta do that? Because I said so. That's tyranny. That's tyranny. That's not wisdom. And it's an indication that you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you knew what you was doing, if you knew why you were doing what you were doing, you would be able to translate that to the child's life so that they can transition from childhood to adulthood without the idea that they can't wait till they get grown so they can do what they want to do. I can't wait to get out of my mama's house. I can't wait to get out of my daddy's house. I can't wait to leave my parents. I can't wait to get to college so I can get shit-faced drunk. Or I can find myself blackout drunk to where I'm raping some girl, or some girl getting blackout drunk to somebody raping her and she don't even remember what happened. Who wants that for their life? You know who wants that for their life? Somebody who's been tyrannized their whole childhood. They can't wait to get away from you so they can fuck up their whole life. That's what they're doing. And they're doing that because you are not raising philosophers. You are not raising people who love wisdom. You are raising fools. And that's why they're everywhere. These people did not get foolish. If you think I'm a fool, it's cool, but I didn't get here by myself. I didn't get here by myself. Think whatever you want about me. Think whatever you want about what I'm saying. But just understand that we all transition from childhood to adulthood, and we bring all of that stuff with us. So if our objective in life is not to facilitate a wise child into a wise adult. You know, I never told Nia something she couldn't do. I would always ask her, Nia, do you think that's wise? Explain to me why you doing this versus that. Or explain to me, is there another way that you can do it? Because I want her to be able to think for herself. I don't want her to do something because I told her to do it. Because I'm not a bully. I'm not a bully. I am a self-proclaimed philosopher, and it took me decades to get to where I am, to have the understanding that I have, to be able to communicate with you in an articulate enough way to help you understand why society looks the way it does. Everybody talk about Trump. Trump ain't become Trump on his own. If you don't like Trump, whatever that's worth, or whoever it is you don't like. You don't like Obama, he didn't become who he is on his own. Nobody became who they are on their own. There is a context, and there is a context that develops fools, and there is a context that develops philosophers. And that's the opposite of a fool, a philosopher. And you not raising philosophers, you raising fools, right? Fools you gotta hit. You gotta hit fools to get them to do what you want. Because otherwise they won't do it. Because there's no internal philosopher to translate what you are trying to communicate to them to what they are trying to communicate to society. So because we don't raise philosophers, you got all these fools around you everywhere. Everywhere. They consume themselves with alcohol. They consume themselves with drugs because little do they know, foolishness is the nurturer of pain and suffering. Foolishness is the nurturing of pain and suffering. And that's why they need that life. That's why they got to indulge in all these sexual partners, right? All these addictive behaviors. Because they're trying to cover up how you smashed them in childhood. You smashed them. And so now they don't know how to be a philosopher. There is no internal philosopher where they can reason and use logic as tools to better their lives. They don't know how to do that. And so they need all these other crutches to help them get through life until they die. They're just waiting to die. They don't know how to help people. They don't know what's helpful. You know, I watched a video yesterday on Facebook. Apparently this person had a stroke. and hit another man's car. And instead of being patient with the man, he got out the car and started punching the dude. Like the dude is in the car having a stroke and he's just punching. But you know why he punching? Because that's what somebody did to him when he was a kid, right? Instead of being compassionate with him, instead of being empathetic with his childhood, right? His childhood told him, when something ain't going the way I want it to go, punch. And that's what y'all teaching kids. And I keep telling you, and this really goes for everybody, but I say this explicitly for black people because 9 out of 10 black people hit their kids. And that's why we can't keep a family together if it costs us our life. We can't do it because we treat each other like shit. And the only way you can treat somebody like shit, if somebody treated you like shit in your childhood. And so you just learn, when you can't get what you want, you treat people like shit. And that's what people do. And that's why we got all these fools around here, because the moral imposition that we put on children, we do not put on adults. You can't tell me what to do. I'm grown. This is my business. I do what I want. It's my life. Like, no, you're right. Look, a part of understanding this as a philosopher, right, is understanding that you have the individual, right? I have individual rights. But the community also has rights on me. That my behavior is aligned with a sense of purpose and meaning that is not merely about happiness that will destroy everything around me in order for me to have it. But that's not what we do. We smash our children. We smash their minds. We smash their potential. And then we send them in these schools and sit them in this desk and make them sit down for hours and write dumb shit down. And they come out of school just as dumb as they were when they went in. Stop hitting black children. Reason with them. And they are gonna make mistakes because they're children. But adults can make mistakes all day. You won't hit them. You won't hit them unless you know you can bully them the way you bully your children. Right? There's a reason people don't hit their 20-year-old kids. You hit your 10-year-old kid, but not your 20-year-old kid. And if you can hit your 20-year-old kid, it's because you so psychologically damaged them that inside they're still the 10-year-old kid. And that's what I'm talking about, the retardation of our children's development. And that's why we got all these fools running around here. People who can't be civilized human beings. Y'all drive around people, they just throw trash out the window. Who does that? What kind of being that was properly loved does that? You should be raising your children to be stewards of this earth, caretakers of this earth. The Quran says Khalifa, governor, one who manages affairs. But how can you manage affairs when as a child your mentality is, I can't wait till I get grown so I can do what I want to? That ain't never a signal of virtue to come. If you have a child thinking to themselves, I can't wait to get away from these tyrants so I can become a tyrant. Because that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about becoming a philosopher. They're talking about becoming a tyrant. And they're going to come out here and they're going to tyrannize everybody they run into. The people on their job, the people they have relationships with. They're going to impose foolishness on everybody. And all of that is because in the transition from childhood to adulthood is the development of fools.